Which is the first of all the commandments? The cheeky answer is, well, commandment number 1, right? So for some context, the rabbis distinguished in the law 613 precepts, 248 commandments, and 365 prohibitions. And so amongst all those commandments and prohibitions, some were very serious, some were lesser, and they had great debates over which took precedence over the other ones. So notice how Jesus answers the question of the debate: love. In the version that Matthew gives us, he ends his teaching with, "The whole of the law and the prophets depend upon these 2 commandments, to love God and your neighbor." That's the meaning of the whole of the law. And it kind of undoes for us the way that we sometimes treat the law. The law is this external thing that sometimes gives us a barrier to that thing that we rather would have or rather would do, but it keeps us from it. And so we view the law as a burden rather than seeing the law as part of the revelation of God himself, who teaches us where the danger zone lies. You see, when we step outside of the land, when we transgress the law, when we sin, we harm ourselves, we harm others, and we hurt our relationship with God. And so God does not want us to live in that way. He wants us to be with him. And therefore, he gives us the truth of the law to preserve us from making those mistakes. Now, most of the commandments we could probably figure out on our own. Do you really need someone to tell you not to murder? Do you really need someone to tell you not to commit adultery, that it's a bad thing? Well, the truth is, we probably do. Sometimes when you're driving on the highway, you'll see the most ridiculous sign I've ever seen: no pedestrians on the highway. And you think to yourself, why in the world would they need to put up a sign that says it's not okay to walk on the highway? Because occasionally, someone walks on the highway. They are a danger to themselves and a danger to everyone around them. And so we have to have signs that say stuff like that. My favorite example, when you're opening up a package, there's a little packet in there that has pellets that absorb humidity, desiccants. And on the package it says, "Do not eat." And why is it on there? Someone somewhere decided to eat those pellets. And so we have to have a warning that says this is dangerous for you, don't eat it. The law works in the same way for us. The law, in its essence, really is pointing at the way of love. That beyond this lies the way of selfishness and brokenness. So don't walk on the highway. Don't eat the desiccants, right? Very many of us, at some point in our life, we've made this barrier. So I recognize that there are the 10 Commandments, and those are God's law, and I must keep those. But all the other stuff that the church has, those are only the rules of men, and I may ignore those. Ignore them at your own peril. Those laws that the church have exist for a reason. They're meant to protect you, to keep you close to God, not merely to be a burden. And so we have precepts that we enumerate. You must go to Mass on Sundays and holy days of obligation. You're required to do that. To choose not to follow that is always a mortal sin, always. You must keep the days of fast and penance in the church, abstinence from meat. That's an obligation that we have. You must support your church. Make sure she has enough for the mission that she's engaged in. You have to obey the marriage laws of the church. You're not free to ignore those. The big one, and this is the one that most of us don't even know about and so fail to keep. Every single one of you are obliged by your baptism to spread the gospel, to evangelize. That's your mission. These laws are not meant to be a burden on us. And one of the problems we have in our society today is we're becoming increasingly more antinomian, against the law, that the law is a bad thing, that it impinges upon my freedom. When in most cases, the law shows you where true freedom lies. Now, if all we had was the law, we'd be in a really bad situation, because I can think off the top of my head a number of laws that I regularly run up against. But we don't just have the law. We have Jesus. And so Jesus' answer essentially reduces to this. Love, that doesn't mean get rid of the oblations and the sacrifices, the religious observances and the obligations. Ignore those, that doesn't matter, as long as I have some kind of sentiment in my heart. It means real love is expressed in keeping the law through love. The letter to the Hebrews says this: Jesus, because he remains forever, has a priesthood that does not pass away. Therefore, he is always able to save those who approach God through him, since he lives forever to make intercession for them. That's our hope in keeping the law. St. John says in his letter, anyone who says, I love God, but hates his brother is a liar. Because if he cannot love his brother whom he has seen, he cannot love God whom he has not seen. The two belong together. So then, it was fitting that we should have such a high priest, holy, innocent, undefiled, separated from sinners, higher than the heavens. When we transgress the law, we have one to whom we can come to be absolved, who renews us in the life of grace and love, so that we can once again get up and, with his help, obey the laws that he has given us. Jesus says, if you love me, you will keep my word, and my Father will love you, and we will come to you and make our dwelling in you. That's the promise of it all. So we need to avoid the two extremes, which are both wrong. One is the idea is a law in and of itself, so keep it externally. I make the check box of all my observances, but I keep a little place of my heart where I guard hatred or prejudice, look down on other people, those kinds of things. When I do that, even though I'm externally observing the law, I'm not keeping its reason or its essence. The other way is I'm nice and tolerant, whatever makes you happy. That isn't love at all. That's a false imitation of what true love is. True love wants, for myself and for everyone else, to live in the true life of divine grace and freedom, and to experience the real love from the God who is love. And I can't have that relationship with him, nor can anyone else, if I'm not willing to recognize the boundaries which he has given us in his own law and through the laws of Holy Mother Church. If we understand that love is the essence of all of it, with the help of his grace, we can keep the law. And then we become like the scribe, to whom Jesus says, "You are not far from the kingdom of God."